The fourth book of the Stormlight Archive, Rhythm of War, was released a few months ago, and ever since reading it, I've had this story running through my head regularly. And as is usually the case with unfinished stories, this Cosmere entry by Brandon Sanderson raised a lot of questions that I'm hungry for answers to. So I thought I'd share the top 5 most pressing questions I have on this book with you guys. Now I won't be listing any obvious questions for this video since that would be rather redundant. I also won't be listing questions that would obviously get answers in the next book. These are questions I would like to see, but that Sanderson could easily put off answering until later in the series. These are questions I think could potentially be answered in the next book and that I would really like to see answered. So things like, who is Odium's champion gonna be, which champion will win, what is going on in Shinovar, etc. won't be asked. These questions are obviously plot points being set up for book 5. No, the questions I have are less obvious and more for those of you who pay a bit too much attention to this book series, just like me. But now that we have that out of the way, let's not drag this video on longer than we have to, shall we? What is Isha doing with the Spren? So, near the end of Rhythm of War, we saw that incredibly disturbing scene of Spren that was somehow forced out of the cognitive realm into the physical realm. The corpses were on tables in some twisted lab for some purpose that we have yet to discover. Why was Isha trying to bring Spren into the physical realm? We know that they clearly can't survive, and that's likely the reason why Spren can only come partially into the physical realm through the Zahel bond. Forcing them to come into the physical realm completely without a Zahel bond is something that should be impossible. Well, we know that Isha is clearly not sane in any capacity and is likely the most mentally affected herald after Nail. What we also know is that Isha is a bondsmith unbound by honor's laws and the ruler of a nation with enough resources to entertain any desire he may have. Put those two together and you have the twisted experiments he's doing with the Spren. Now I'm not saying he's just doing it because he's crazy, powerful and rich. These are clearly deeply scientific experiments, if quite disturbing. There's a method to this madness and a clear goal behind it, we just don't know what it is yet. I really hope we get an answer to this in the next book, and I also hope that Brandon Sanderson decides to one day write a horror novel since he clearly has the knack for writing things that churn the stomach. Where is Zahel and Azure? For those of you who haven't read Warbreaker, I'm about to give you a bit of a Cosmere spoiler, though it has no impact on the overall story. So if that's an issue for you, you may want to skip ahead a bit. Okay, so we know that Zahel and Azure are Vasha and Vivenna from Warbreaker and that they've world hopped from Nalthis to Roshar somehow. The last we saw of Azure/Vivenna was in Oathbringer when she left Kaladin and crew in Shadesmar. The last we saw of Zahel/Vasha was in the beginning of Rhythm of War before the Singer invasion of Urithiru, and then nothing. So where are they? I think it's quite odd that they haven't been mentioned since. Now Brandon has said that Zahel was busy with something during the invasion and that he just didn't have the room to tell that part of the story in the book, so we'll likely get a lot more information on him in the next book. I'm just very curious to know what he was doing that was so important during the invasion. I mean, he's probably the most skilled fighter in the tower, and yes, I think he's more skilled than Kaladin. Fight me in the comments if you disagree. So having a character that could have made such a difference just be off somewhere must mean that whatever he was doing was super important. And forgetting Vasha for a moment, what about Azure? She hasn't been seen since book 3, so that's even more time. If you've seen any of my earliest videos, you'll know that Vivenna was my favorite character from Warbreaker, so I'm very interested to know what she's been up to. She's clearly more mature and a stronger fighter since her time in Warbreaker, so I'd be very interested to see just what she's been up to. We know she's been hunting Nightblood, and considering Szeth and Kaladin are headed to Shinovar, I have a feeling we'll see quite a bit of Azure in the next book. Overall, I'm actually just very intrigued by these two characters and just exactly what their roles are in the Stormlight Archive. I'm really hoping we see quite a bit of them in the next book. What did Taravangian do to Hoid? At the end of Rhythm of War, we saw a very interesting interaction between Hoid and Taravangian. If you haven't seen it yet, I recommend checking out a video Lost in Discovery did on that scene specifically, to not only refresh your memory, but to also think about the larger implications. So in this scene, Hoid confronts Taravangian but notices that something is off and that this is not how Race would normally react. Taravangian realizes this and reaches out to Hoid. He then somehow manipulates or takes some of the breaths that held a portion of Hoid's memories. Hoid subsequently completely forgets about the interaction, though he does notice something is wrong with his perfect pitch. But what exactly happened here? What exactly did Taravangian do to Hoid? Brandon has confirmed since that Taravangian didn't take the breaths, but rather removed them from Hoid in some way. So that basically answers the question, sure, but I'm actually more interested in the larger implications of that. First of all, Taravangian seems to be able to affect Hoid in a way that Race never did. Race never even tried to properly interact with Hoid in a similar way. On top of that, it seems that Hoid has no idea of just what Taravangian is now capable of. To me, this is a particularly scary thought. To remind you of my video I did on Hoid last week, Hoid is probably the most powerful invested being other than shards themselves. So seeing Odium do something to this character means he's a much greater threat than we originally thought. And to pull one over on Hoid himself is also a feat that I've never really heard anyone else accomplish before. Now, some believe that Hoid is aware of what really happened, but I honestly don't think so. I think this scene set up the concept that Taravangian is not only a much larger threat than Raze was to our main cast, but that he also has a deep level of cunning that even Hoid wasn't protected against. I think this single scene will likely carry quite a bit of weight in the coming book, and that we'll see some major repercussions and implications sprouting from it. Regardless of just what exactly happened here, I'm on the edge of my seat to see just what will happen in book 5. Now, before I continue with the last few questions I have, I'd like to ask that if you're enjoying the video and haven't subscribed yet, that you'll consider doing so now. I upload 3 times a week and I have no plans on slowing down anytime soon. I'm trying to reach 400 subscribers as my next milestone, and each new person to join this community really helps out a lot. And if you've already subscribed, I'd like to thank you so much for all your support. But that's enough of that, let's get back to the video. What are Cultivation's plans? Now, this question is one that could open a whole can of worms for astute Cosmere readers. Cultivation is a shard that's ended up being a lot more cunning and intelligent than I thought she would be. Now, I'll admit, that's a mistake on my part. In every instance we've interacted with shards, they've proven to be incredibly intelligent. They're often playing 4D chess on a worldwide or even galaxy-wide scale. Mistborn spoilers, so skip ahead about 10 seconds or so if you haven't finished the first trilogy, but we see that Preservation actually planned Sazed's ascension to Harmony at least well before any of the main cast was born, and we see that Ruin countered his plans at least as far back as Vin's early childhood. We also know that Endowment returned Lightsong in Warbreaker specifically for him to allow our heroes to win against the enemy. I could go into more examples, but I want to get back to my main point. I just wanted to make it clear that shards seem to think and scheme light years ahead of ordinary characters. So it should have come as no surprise to me that Cultivation has some very detailed schemes she's working on. She took Dalinar's memories of Evie away long enough for him to become a stronger man capable of denying Odium's offer. She also once had Nightblood, so we know she somehow allowed for it to fall into Nail's hands and then eventually into Zeth's. That, coupled with the spikes of superintelligence she gave Taravangian, is what eventually led him to kill Race with Nightblood and become the new vessel of the Shard. Cultivation has been forming and manipulating events for a long while without us even really realizing it. And that leads me to my question. What exactly is her ultimate plan here? She raised Taravangian to being a shard, but now what? Did she just want Race out of the picture specifically? Or is there something greater at play here? More and more, I'm finding Cultivation to be a very compelling character in the books. I really hope that with the events of the 5th book, we get to see or at least get more information on just what exactly her plans are. What does Thydakar want? So it's pretty much been confirmed that Thydakar, the mysterious leader of the Ghostbloods, is actually Calcia under a pseudonym. And while that answers the question as to Thydakar's identity, it still leaves a lot to be answered. We know that the Ghostbloods have been interested in 3 primary things. The first is the Unmade. Mraize has asked Shallan on more than one occasion to intervene or interact with the Unmade in some way. The second is the Heralds. The whole Ghostblood plot of the 4th book is that they need Shallan to locate the Herald Kalak. And finally, we have what I think is the most interesting concern of the Ghostbloods. They want to know how to transport investiture between worlds. Now, we have hints and clues to show that they've tried a few different methods of carrying investiture between worlds, but it hasn't really worked out for them yet. And their particular interest in Roshar is due to the fact that it seems to be a planet with the most easily accessed and gathered investiture in all the Cosmere. All you need is a gem and a high storm and you have portable stormlight, i.e. portable investiture. Somehow, I think that their interest in the Unmade, the Heralds and investiture is all linked in some way. I don't exactly know just what Thydakar/Calcia would want with all this information. Even the fact that Thydakar is Calcia threw me way off my previous thoughts on the matter, so now I don't even know what to expect. But with Shallan challenging the Ghostbloods at the end of Rhythm of War, I think we'll definitely be getting some further information in the next book, and I'm all here for it. I have my theories, of course, but I guess we'll have to see just how things play out. Anyway guys, that has been it from me for now. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the video and that you'd consider subscribing to the channel. Let me know in the comments what questions you have that you'd like to see answered. And if you have any theories on answers to my questions, I'd love to discuss those, so leave a comment on that as well. But thank you very much for watching, I really do appreciate it. My name has been Raven, and I'll see you next time. Take care everybody.